So this is a public meeting. Your likeness and words may be recorded and broadcast. It's for posterity. Because this is a big deal. This is really exciting. Thank you for coming out. I'm Beth Storrs. I am one of the co-chairs of the Town Management Study Committee. Bill Tomasino, waving hand Bill, is the other co-chair. And we've got Tim Wheeler and Wayne Texera and Paul Mother, who are the rest of the committee. We've been working on this project close to a year and a half now. This last phase of it, and the town meeting in May, the town voted unanimously to have the Town Management Study Committee develop draft language about a special act so Brooklyn to have a town administrator. And that's what we spent this summer doing. Some of the basic principles that were really important as we did this, that we tried to keep in mind, was defining and balancing the areas of responsibility. One of the things we heard repeatedly as we talked to town administrators from other communities and people who had been in town government in a variety of roles was the place, when there's conflict, it's in the gray areas. So we worked really hard to limit the gray areas and make it clear who was responsible for what. That was the basic principle we tried to use. We also tried to build this for the long term. A lot of the special acts we saw had laundry lists of different positions and how they related to each other within the framework of a town administrator plus select board governance model. We didn't want to have something we'd have to go back and amend over and over and over again if we created new positions, right? So we tried to make the language flexible and good potentially for the long term. And the other thing that was really, really important is this is not an adversarial position dropped in the middle of town to blow stuff up. It was really, really important that this be designed as a collaborative, coordinated, hey! Sorry, there's no PowerPoint presentation. So really make this position all about collaboration, coordination, and communication. The point of this position is to help and support us all, people who are working in town government and people who are living in the town of Berlin. So those were the three main principles that we were using as we worked on this. So the language of the special act is not a contract. The hiring process, driven by the select board, will generate a contract at the end when they find the right person, and that will lay out the real nitty-gritty, how much this person's paid, the conditions of their employment, all that stuff. This is an attempt to lay out the responsibilities and how the TA interacts with all the rest of the entities in town. There are 11 sections, you notice. I'm sure everyone has read the warrant very carefully. There are 11 sections. There's some lawyer language, but a lot of it is actually fairly straightforward. The things I wanted to concentrate on, section 1 just says if there's any conflicts, this act supersedes them. But sections 2, 4, 5, 6, and 7 were the ones I was really going to concentrate on. Section 2 was something that we didn't have to include. This is about the role of the Board of Selectmen. Laying out very clearly, they are still in charge. The select board is the primary goal-setting and policy-making body for the town. And so it just reiterates powers that already exist. Appointing department heads, issuing warrants for the town meeting, reviewing the budget and making recommendations, serve as the licensing board, all the things that the select board does anyway are reserved in this act, called out as these are the things the select board is in charge of. The things we added, there are actually two new things in the special act. One is the authority to appoint any position in town if the person or persons who are responsible for making that appointment have not moved on that within 90 days. So it's not something the select board has to do, but it does give them a little bit of authority and potentially some motivation when there are seats on boards that aren't being filled and things like that. The select board would have the authority to come in and fill them if necessary. The other thing the section 2 lays out that's new and different is the power to hire a town administrator and to make a contract. So section 3 establishes the office of the town administrator. Sections 4, 5, 6, and 7 lay out the duties, the main areas of responsibility. And many of these things are things that no one in town is currently responsible for. And there are some things that the select board is responsible for, or various other offices are currently responsible for, or do, whether or not it's part of their job description. And so these have all kind of been brought together in several different areas. The first is the daily operations. This is where the TA, basically, this is where the wear and tear happens. This is the TA being responsible for consulting and advising the select board on all aspects of town governance, working with FinCom on the financial pieces, working with the town meeting. This person would potentially be talking a lot at town meeting on the various warrant articles because they're likely to be the person who knows the ins and outs on them all. This person is the resource to consult and advise basically everybody in town on what information they need to do their job better. That's their resource for the town. Chief Procurement Officer, maintenance and use and rental of town buildings, offices, land that are currently under the control of the select board. Everything we're talking about when we talk about the powers of the town administrator. The town administrator is the agent of the select board. So they only have authority over the things in town that the select board ultimately has authority over. So when we talk about town facilities, we don't mean the library, which falls under the library trustees, but the library trustees would have the option of asking the town administrator to assist. So, maintenance, use, and security of things that fall under the purview of the select board. Working with town council on any litigation. Coordinate all the operational and strategic planning that should be happening in town. Working with public safety to coordinate in the event of some type of large-scale emergency. They would be the coordinating piece for that. They would be the key for complaint resolution. You have an issue with getting something done in town, they're the person you can always call when you can't get hold of somebody else, the person who's supposed to be doing that job. And then media and public relations liaison. I'm sure, as the storms go up the coast, as tornadoes hit small towns, it's the town administrator who's the one who ends up being on the news. Hopefully we never have any of those sorts of incidents, but if we do, it's part of their responsibility to manage the public relations fallout from that and any interaction with the media. This is just in the town manager's study committee opinion. This is not the laundry list of everything. It's written in the act. There are 23 things under daily operations. But these are some of the highlights and some of the things that are potentially new in terms of we now have somebody who's in charge of these things and whose job it is to do things. So those are the powers under daily operations. There's also human resources, which was something we heard repeatedly as a really, really big issue. So the town administrator would be responsible for working with the personnel committee to develop and maintain the bylaws, personnel bylaws. They would do the recruitment and screening for department head positions, and they would present candidates to the select board for them to do final interviews and for them to pick. But they're doing all of the legwork to make that happen. In the same way, they do hiring for everybody that reports up to the board in conjunction with whoever the supervisor, the actual hiring authority is, and with the approval of the select board. All of the power of the town administrator comes from the select board. If anyone else wants help in their searches, who is not directly under the select board. Town administrator's job is to help them do that. And then if collective bargaining agreements and personnel bylaws, any of those sorts of issues also go to the town administrator as their point person. And then there's the fiscal stuff. So this is the one place, the slide would be really helpful because I say in really big green letters on my slides that you're not going to get to see. There is no change to the current budget process. It's still the select board reviews it and make recommendations. Goes to FinCom for reviews and recommendations before going to town meeting. The different piece is the town administrator would work with all the various departments and with FinCom in the process of making that budget. So they're doing all of the logistics and the legwork and bringing that to the select board, making sure their recommendations are appropriately disseminated, and then working with FinCom to make sure the changes they want have been recorded, and then bringing the whole thing to the town meeting. So what we're adding is logistical and administrative support and expertise. So any department head, anyone who's building a budget who may not have that expertise, the town administrator is the go-to person to provide them that support. They also work with with capital planning to help make sure those long-term expenditures are appropriately reflected in the budget. And then over the course of the fiscal year, they're monitoring expenditures. They're doing the very day-to-day sort of approval of payroll and expense warrants, and they are expected to be applying for grants, identifying local, state, and federal funding opportunities, and making sure we're taking advantage of those as much as we possibly can. And then Section 7 just says that the TA needs access to materials they need in order to do their job. So you can't, this is just to prevent anyone attempting to do an end run and just not play the town administrator. You know, Section 8, 9, 10 are all about this doesn't change anything that isn't in direct conflict with it. It doesn't affect any contracts that are currently open. No one's going to lose their job by this. And when this is approved by the legislature, it would go into effect. And we would then have the position of town administrator available to us to fill. So I went through that really fast. What kind of questions do you have? Yeah.
I'm just curious if you have a sense of what the available pool of available administrators is, and what do you think it's going to be tough to find someone? Is it easy to find someone? Does someone want this job? Would you want this job?
If I were a town administrator, what we have heard from the people we're talking to, Berlin is a very attractive town to work in because we currently have a functional government. There is a lot of dysfunction and problems, in which you read the newspapers and you see what's happening, and we don't have those issues to the scale that a lot of other places have. This is a great community. It is moving towards Boston. It's a very typical process for town administrators to start at the western end of the state and move east, and we're kind of nice in the middles, you know, as people are doing that progress. It is also potentially a great place for somebody. What we're really looking for is somebody with significant experience. We're not looking to bring in somebody green for this. That's certainly our recommendation as a community. We want somebody with significant experience.
We want to poach somebody from another town.
What we really want is potentially somebody who's our ideal candidate has, say, 20 years of experience doing this somewhere else or multiple somewhere else's, yep. And now maybe they've retired out of that, but maybe they decided that was a bad idea and they've got 3 or 5 years left in them. We want that person in, to set somebody with a lot of experience to come in and set this up and get everybody kind of working together. And then in 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, when they retire for real, then we're on a level field with all these other places. So, go on.
One of the things we've recommended to the board is that they hire a recruiting firm. And these recruiting firms have quite a network. I contacted one, told him I was from Berlin. He said, "Oh, you're looking for town administrator, right?" I said, "Yeah."
So there is
fast.
there is a community of people, and at least, I mean, we've talked to a lot of town administrators. So
Did
we've
any of
actually,
them approach you or people within the thing and
We
say,
have.
hey, if you open up a position?
we've yes,
That's
actually,
good, all
we've
right.
certainly had people say, hey, talk to me, I'm available,
Yeah.
kind of thing,
Okay.
you know, so.
But I would just say that, you know, part of our recommendation for the select board, so, you know, hopefully the act will go through town meeting as proposed, but other deliverables that we're providing to the select board is a draft job description, which basically pulls from the special act. They were talking about the list. There's about 4 consultants that we've identified, and just and as part of the process, it's in the special act to say that the hiring process includes having a hiring committee. So it's not going to be like, I just want to make sure anybody that's hearing it on the recording, it's not going to be this kind of pocket like, oh, you know, somebody. No, I know, but just, you don't want anybody to hear that. Is that, you know, there'll be a hiring committee, there'll be a process, but you know, this is a big position. This is as big as, you know, the position of superintendent for the schools. You know, they just recently went through it. They had a consultant help them through the hiring process, which is good to, you know, coach people on the committee. They have the connections. You know, they've written job descriptions. We've done a lot as part of the committee, so we're giving them a job description. We're giving them some hiring structure tasks that would normally need to be done. But we just think that for the investment and given the importance of getting it right, that, you know, that they should do that, and that might bring it to the next.
Right.
You mentioned the legislator. Am I to understand that this has to be approved on Beacon Hill?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay.
That is, with any luck, the final step. It is already, the town council, Berlin Town Council has seen it, our law firm, and lawyers on Beacon Hill have seen it, thanks to Harold McNaughton's office. So it has already been through two sets of lawyer eyes, which make us really happy and feel really good about the smoothness of its passage on Beacon Hill. Which brings us to warrant article number 2, which is the request for up to $16,000 for the select board to start the process of hiring consultants and laying the groundwork to do a search once we get the approval. The issue is, can't do anything without money. No hiring firm is going to come in and work for us on spec. If we have to wait until May to fund this, it's a 3 to 4 month process in order to hire somebody. Trying to put together a hiring committee and a review committee of town employees and townspeople to work over the summer is not an easy plan. And we would be looking at bringing somebody in the fall, right as all the communities are having their fall town meeting. And town meetings are sort of the center of the life of town administrators in terms of the cycle of the year. So by giving the select board the option of starting that process now, we can hit the ground running the minute we're approved and potentially have somebody to start at the beginning of the fiscal year in July or August. So they've got some ground under them before we roll into fall town meeting.
Yeah, if I could just add to that, the other aspect and reason to get a consultant on board and to do it now using that funding is even with the approval of this by the legislature, we can't actually fund it until May town meeting. So it would also give the opportunity for the consultant to actually, you know, update like what the salary ranges are to be competitive in the market, so that when the budget is put together for May, it's taking. I mean, we made a recommendation that it would probably be around $100,000 salary, because that's about the going rate in this region, and for a town with our complications. So it would just be important to, you know, go into town meeting versus, you know, set the salary not at a point where it's competitive. And just the other part, you asked me, what does it have to do with the legislature? If you hadn't heard from our May, so there were 3 options on how to create this. One would be by a charter, and our town is not ready to tackle the charter for town government. The other one is a special act, which is what we're doing, and the third would have been just do it by bylaw. The reason we recommended we went with a special act is because it's a lot more permanent, it's a lot more difficult to change, and we felt that it's important for the town's stability to have something that's well thought out and stable, that would be able to stand a good test instead of just being able to be quickly amended or things like that. So that's why a special act.
And to be clear, that number 16,000, as we started talking to consultants, we said, what's the ballpark? How much do these things cost? And so the range we were given was $8,000 to $16,000. So that's where the $16,000 came from. We don't actually expect it to cost that much to hire the consultant. The entire process, because the cost of the consultant does not include advertising, for instance. So we have to pay for all of those costs. But with the work the committee has already done, hopefully we're at the low end of that. But we're very happy that the select board decided to take the top end of that range to give themselves as much flexibility as they could have for this process.
Maybe a question for Bill. Did any of these consulting agents or companies give an idea of the process, or they would sit down with selectmen and interview, or they need to get a feel for the town before they go out there?
That is one thing they'll do. And basically, the 3 I talked to, they basically have a menu of services. We'll talk to the town, we'll write a job description, someone even write the special act.
Which we've done.
They know about it.
That's good. Unfortunately, on your spot, right?
Exactly. We should really get that.
So their fee will be based on what we select from the menu.
Certainly it's an employment dating service for all intents and purposes. Several of them have clauses that say, if this person doesn't work out, we will search again for you for free or at a reduced cost. So they're really interested in finding the person who's the right match for the town where they are at any given moment, which is really nice. They're not just going to throw out a bunch of advertisements and take all comers. They're actually really interested in learning about us and making sure we get the right fit, which seems like money well spent. Anything else we can tell you about warrant article number 1, warrant number 2? The last slide, which is also not here, is to thank you for coming out. Thank you for being involved in this process, and a big thank you to everybody in town government and in the town who's been part of this process. It's been close to 18 months, and we've asked a lot of questions and gathered a whole bunch of information. And if people hadn't been interested in talking to us and hadn't been excited about this idea, we would not have gotten this far. We're really happy with the act we've got and think it represents Berlin really well.
So can this be decided and a done deal at the town meeting that's coming up? Or so it doesn't have to go on an actual ballot that we have to vote on or anything like that?
As far as we know, we've been told different things from the division of local services about how it's worked. So we've written this so that it basically it's approved by the town at town meeting.
Okay.
But because it's a special act, it then needs to be approved by the legislature to actually become effective.
Okay.
So unless it comes back from the legislature requiring a vote, it would be effective at that
Okay.
point. So ideally that would be the case.
That is what we believe is.
I mean, we would need to go to town meeting in May and get approved for a line item, so
Right.
there's,
For the salary.
If the town,
for
right, if it's,
Say
if
town
that
administrator.
happens part of the regular budget.
But this has been given out. We had a town officers meeting. There was a town officers meeting 3-4 weeks ago. So this has been reviewed. It was delivered to the town officers and department heads prior to that meeting. We didn't have any questions at that meeting. We haven't had any questions really.
But we had comments
And
from
we had
Dave
some
Westerling,
comments.
and June actually pointed out an error we had made, and we were able to fix that. So we've had people with good eyes who've been through it multiple times, which make us feel really good.
But no major concerns.
No major
Just more minor changes here and there.
If you wake up in the middle of the night with a burning question about this, you can reach out to any of us. We really hope you will support this at town meeting. And if you're not planning on supporting it, please let us know that and talk to us in advance.
Have you done any polling? Do you know what the,
We did a survey.
Well, I mean, the original survey, was 75% of the people surveyed said, yes, we should totally have one.
I know with like 25% that came back and said we shouldn't do this.
Well, they were, people were like, well, what about the money? And what if we get a bad one? And, all of perfectly reasonable concerns. But so far, the fact that the people who work in town want it. How often do you say people, yes, let's add another layer of bureaucracy,
Well, this is bureaucracy, this is how.
Well, right, exactly, but you can frame it as another,
Another layer.
So.
Everybody sees it as that one person they can go complain for everything.
Well, exactly. Well, as opposed to just kind of tossing it out in the air and maybe finding a select person who has some expertise who can help you. So we're excited about the
I think it's
opportunity.
a great idea. I'm surprised we're doing it already. And
That's
it's amazing.
a common reaction.
It's amazing that the town, I see the town as being like this whole piece of farm equipment. And somebody sitting there banging on and knows to kick this thing over here. And if it was just left to its own devices without those people, they would just fly apart in a million pieces. And it's amazing that hasn't happened
That
yet.
is a great metaphor.
But we've got the people that know how to fix old farm equipment. So
Yeah.
it keeps running, which is very appealing. Right?
Yeah.
I'm new to town, so.
Well, which is
We
why.
have great volunteers, but a lot of stress gets put on our volunteers. A lot is asked for them. Last of them really shouldn't be.
Well, and a lot is asked of our select board, which is ridiculous for volunteers running a $10 million business in their spare time. That's not how we should be doing this.
What was that? It was ridiculous for,
Well, just have a volunteer select board running a $10 million business in their spare time. There's nobody at the head of that ship.
It's like a company that has like a board of directors without, a president that's there to really every single day, 40
Maybe a
hours a
treasurer and
week,
accountant.
40 hours a week, be there to be accountable to manage. So I think through the whole process, just to be clear, it's like, I think we all feel and everybody in town feels that, the town's done really well, and is well managed and continues to be well managed. But I think based on, what's expected in this day and age, things are becoming more and more complicated. We're one of only 26 towns in the entire Commonwealth that don't have a formal type of professional town management. And and we're like there's only 6 in Worcester County that are like that. So we're a town that has really big town issues, even though we're a smaller community. So I think the goal is that this is an investment by creating this position to ensure that we've got professional management, because you can't always rely on whoever runs for town office is going to have the experience and knowledge from their background. And government laws and regulations are specialized, and that's what these town administrators do. That's why, again, as Beth said, what we've, whether it's a 20-year person or maybe somebody that has 5 or 6 years of experience in another town but really does understand it and is ready for the next level, but isn't necessarily just starting out. I think that's what we see. But again, that's why there'll be another whole process after this. That will, look at the job description. In the job description, there's hiring, requirements and things like that. So, but that's ultimately up to the Board of Selectmen to make those decisions, and then a hiring board to help to screen candidates. So.
One of the main things we've heard from department heads and other employees is they want a person there on a day-to-day basis. A lot of times they have a question, they have to wait a week or 2 weeks to talk to the selectman. This way they can go right to the town administrator and get an answer on a very timely basis. And they were all almost unanimous with that desire.
the board doesn't want to help them, it's just by law, we have to make decisions as a group.
Right.
So this will allow one person, be the point person, and make basic decisions.
No, it makes sense. It's
Yeah,
almost like,
some
it's
of the
almost like
stuff-
petty cash. Like,
Yeah.
we need that lubricant of petty cash sometimes to make things work.
Right. That's the idea. Thanks.
Well, thank you for
Thank
your
you.
time.